Hello, everyone. Now I know that I normally do effed up news on Sunday night, and I was still planning on doing it today too, but it took me a little bit longer to figure out how to do this stream than I anticipated it would, because tonight for an extra special treat, starting, in theory, in about half an hour, we are going to be watching the New Hampshire Democrats cry about the Free State Project. Here, let me just pull up the link to the webinar. Hang on. Guys, I've been working at the last minute. I'm honestly not entirely sure I hope I figured out the Zoom stuff properly. I hope I did. We're going to cross our fingers that it works. If it doesn't, I will troubleshoot it at the time. I've done everything I could. I've done so much testing today. But today we are going to be watching, starting in half an hour, New Hampshire Democratic Party presents Live Free and Die, a forum on the libertarian. Oh god, my fucking info's in there. God damn it. Whatever. I don't really care. I don't care. This is actually public info, so I don't really care if you guys have it. Don't fucking dox me, you sons of bitches. But today we are going to be watching Live Free and Die, a forum on the libertarian takeover of New Hampshire's Republican Party. Join us. The Hillsborough County Democratic Committee invites you to a forum on the impact of the Free Staters and other extreme libertarians on New Hampshire's legislature. The forum will cover the libertarian agenda, the history of the Free State Project and its rise in New Hampshire, and how the movement is having a harmful impact on New Hampshire residents and democracy. We'll discuss ways concerned voters can stay informed and take action. Please share this invite with your friends and family. Well, we're going to do more than share. We're going to document this craziness, this lunacy. I'm really excited about this. I think that I have seen one other presentation the Democrats have done on the terrorists in the Free State Project, and it was like an epic meltdown, and it was amazing. I know that this event is actually, just in case the New Hampshire Democrats suss out our plans here and have a problem with me live streaming it, don't worry. I have several backup invitations. So if they kill one, we're just going to do another one. I've got several backups. I've only got one in my real name. I have several other names floating around on their registration list because I have 18,000 emails. So we're going to be watching it one way or the other. I hope they just let it go. We'll see. I want to do a special shout out to my friends in the New Hampshire Libertarian Party and the Mises Caucus specifically, because I know some of them will be watching this live at the Shell tonight. I'm sorry, I didn't feel like driving my ass over to the Shell, guys. I'm sorry. It's a ways for me. But I will be streaming it here. I have offered, and maybe some of my friends will take me up on this. If anyone in the LPNH wants to come on and do some commentary with me, you guys are more than welcome. Just let me know. I'll send you the link to come on. But I think this is going to be fun. I think this is going to be a grand old time. I don't really have anything going to talk. I just wanted to start early to get people into the stream. If you guys have stuff you want to talk about, we're still waiting for them to start at this point, so I can't share the Zoom with you guys. I've been working diligently for 3 or 4 hours to figure out how to stream the Zoom. I hope I did it right. I suck at technology. Yeah, Derek's in the chat. Derek, do you want to come on and do commentary? Let me know if you want to come on. The Shell is a libertarian club in New Hampshire. There are libertarian clubs sprinkled throughout the state. The Shell is one of them. Sean, you can come on too. Why are you guys coming on the stream? My God. Doing all this work, gotta do it myself. Thank you, Sean, for the super chat. I appreciate it. I don't know, guys. I think this is gonna be fun. I think, part of the funny thing is that I'm still on the New Hampshire Democratic Party mailing list. They still think I'm a Democrat. No joke. I get emails from them all the effing time. And so I think that that's why my registration got approved so quickly for this. They maybe have not sussed out that I'm not on their team anymore. Dude, so here's the thing. Here is the thing. I always thought that... Oh, did other people super chat in? Oh my God. Mandatory carry. I just want to acknowledge there was a super chat sent in before I started the stream rather. Mandatory carry. In case I can't make it, keep fighting. I will mandatory carry. You know that. But no. So one of the things that I think is so funny about this entire affair is like, I always thought that Democrats would be most pissed off at me becoming a Republican, right? That was part of the reason I joined the Republican Party for about 15 minutes. You guys don't remember, I had a one night stand with the Republican Party. It seemed like a great idea. Well, I had my beer goggles on. Then I woke up the next morning and I was like, oh, you guys are just not what I thought you were. So I was in the Republican Party for about 15 minutes. But part of the reason was not just to piss off Lauren Witzke when I was doing that debate on Elijah Schaffer's channel way back in the day. It was also to piss off the Democrats. But what I didn't realize at the time is that the Democrats in New Hampshire are significantly more pissed about the Libertarians. They are significantly more afraid of the Libertarians than they are of the Republicans. They focus, dude, let me show you guys the other thing that came up on Twitter today. This is insane. Oh, is that changing my screen? Hang on. Okay, I don't want you guys, hang on. Stop share. I'm going to learn how to use the internet today. I swear. But let me show you what else they did today. You guys got to see this. This is insane. Okay. Check this out. Share screen. Check this out. Oh, Jared's here. Guys, Jared's going to be joining our ranks very soon. Can't wait, Jared. Check out this tweet from the Plymouth area Democrats in New Hampshire saying, pay attention to the parasites that are attempting to infect your town's school board, budget committee, select board, and supervisor of the checklist. They are the free staters. They literally are comparing the free staters to parasites. Can we talk about how the Democrats are the party of empathy and human compassion when they're literally comparing people moving to New Hampshire as parasites? Or in Derek's case, Derek grew up here. He did not move here. He grew up here. Crazy. Sean says, Libertarians don't play nice with the establishment GOP. Oh, dude. Chris Sununu hates the Libertarians. And we don't like him much either. Which we'll be making clear coming up. Yes, this is real. This is real. They're doing a whole separate webinar on Wednesday about this. It's crazy, right? So we're going to be watching this epic little meltdown tonight. I'm really hoping that they just like, I kind of tried, I'm going to be honest. I kind of tried to fly under the radar with this stream a little bit. I didn't really promote it. I didn't really talk about it because I'm just slightly afraid that they're going to kick me out of the Zoom. Just slightly. Because we all know, like, the Democrats are not really people who appreciate transparency and openness. And so I don't know that they're going to appreciate being streamed on the internet. How many free staters we got in the chat tonight? I'm just curious. Or even if because I'd be honest, like I can't identify as I feel like I can't identify as a free stater because I didn't move here as a free stater. So I feel like I don't get that clout. Like I moved here 10 years ago and I was still a Democrat. It just happened to work out like really, really well in my case, and I have no intention of leaving. But how many free staters we got in the chat tonight? Yeah, Kurt says they banned me. This is why I registered under several different names. Oh, Douglas is here. Excellent. Well, yeah, I mean, the Democrats generally talk about being about open dialogue, but whatevs. Ziri, lucky enough to be born here. Grandma Nay says, I want to be a free stater. Well, you can, man. Oh, dude. Come on. Well, Justice, that's because you pay way more attention to my tweets than you possibly should. Sean's a free stater. We know that. Let's see. What is a free stater? So let's talk about the Free State Project. Since we have some time while we're waiting. Hang on. I'm not the best person to talk about the Free State Project, to be honest, but since, we have some time, we might as well talk about what exactly it is. I can bring up their website, fsp.org, and we can... Free Staters are essentially... Derek says you don't have to move to New Hampshire to want to make it a freer place. Yeah. I might I didn't move here for the Free State Project. I don't feel like I can claim the cred, but I am fully in support of the Free State Project, TF, Free State of Texas. No. New Hampshire is more liberty oriented than Texas. New Hampshire is more liberty oriented than Florida. Our governor sucks on most things, not all things. He doesn't, exclusively suck. But all right, let's look at the Free State Project website. Bing! Liberty lives in New Hampshire. Join thousands of freedom-loving people just like you. The Free State Project is a movement of thousands of freedom-loving people to New Hampshire. Already, there are thousands of individuals just like you right here in New Hampshire. Together, Free Staters have built an incredible, real-life community full of people who value liberty and responsibility. Ooh, Derek, do you want to come on? Hang on. Yes! Hang on. We're going to bring Derek on the stream. I'm texting you the link right now, or doing it through Signal. There you go. Hang on. I will put the if anyone else in the Mises Caucus Signal group wants to join, I will put the link in the chat. You can join. I'm excited that Derek's coming on though. So the Free State movement is basically it's basically a bunch of libertarians moving to New Hampshire. And basically the goal is to get like critical mass of libertarians so we can create our own little libertarian society. 5,223 Free Staters already in New Hampshire. There's guys like I had no idea how thriving the whole liberty thing was here. There are like clubhouses all around the state. There are meetups. If you want to move here, they will help you. They will help you move. There's a whole real estate agency dedicated to this stuff. There's real estate that was like Porcupine Real Estate. People will help you get a job. Like they will help you get here, and you will have friends. You will have meetups. They will tour. If you're unsure about New Hampshire, maybe you've never been here, they will like show you around. They're like planning a whole bus tour. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of ways that you can come and explore New Hampshire if you are so inclined. You can come to PorcFest next year. PorcFest is epic. Yeah, Derek's here. Okay, hang on. Stop screen. Derek, welcome. Oh no, I can't hear you. I don't know if it's your sound or if it's my mic setup. It might actually be my mic. God damn it. Hang on. Oh, shoot. I don't know if this might work because I had to set up my audio coming through Zoom. Hang on. Let me change my mic setting real quick, and that way. Let's see. Derek, can you say something, please? Can't hear you. What is your mic setting on? See, this is what happens when I have to get fancy for things. Hang on. One more. Let me try one more thing. Oh,
hello,
wait.
Hello?
Yeah!
There we go. It was me.
Excellent. That's good to hear because I was like, I can't change any more settings. I'll break something. What's going on, Derek?
Not much. Had a pretty boring day doing government stuff, so not fun, but...
Are you excited for our webinar tonight?
I am.
I think this is going to be a good old time.
So, cheers, everybody. Live
cheers.
Free or Die.
I have juice. I have a green juice. Cheers. Yeah.
This is exciting. And it was great. Everyone piling on the Plymouth Democrats there because that's my area. That's my neck of the woods there. So we
Oh
really
my
showed
god.
them.
I could not even deal with that whole affair. Like what did you make of that when you saw? I mean, it's kind of just par for the course if we're honest.
Yeah, I mean, you know the saying, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. So we're in that fight phase. They're coming after us, and
Mhm.
that just makes us more bold, and it gives us confidence that we're doing the right thing.
It does. It does. Hang on one sec. I'm just testing the audio to make sure I didn't break anything. Okay, it's still working. So, have you seen any of these webinars before where they've been coming after the Free State Project and the Libertarians? Because I've only seen one other one where they were
Yeah,
basically calling them terrorists.
yeah, I popped into it was the New Hampshire State Progress. I only caught the end of it, but
Yeah.
yeah, they were talking about extremism in New Hampshire, and they mentioned the Free State Project in there.
They had a whole picture of Carla. They do not like
Yeah,
Carla,
and they
like
do
at
not
all.
like her. Yeah, and she's the nicest lady in the world too. She's
She's
so
so
amazing.
great.
Shout out to
Sh-
Carla Garrick.
Yeah, shout out to Carla. We love you, Carla. Oh my god. So we're just basically waiting for them to start. They haven't started the webinar yet.
Yeah.
So Derek, what's going on in your world?
Um. Basically, I've kind of had my schedule open up, so now I'm pretty much full throttle into building my Liberty community up here in Plymouth, New Hampshire, the Plymouth area.
Mhm.
I set up a free state community called the Pemi Valley Porcupines. We're just organizing everyone in the area together, getting everyone together, meeting up, networking, just having some fun together, getting out, getting drinks together, and it's been a great time. It's been really rewarding. I've met some amazing people in my area, and it's always amazing when you go out and you spend time with people who think the same way that you do, and share your beliefs, and don't want to crush you or call you a parasite.
No, I know. I mean, it's like the all the libertarian events I've been to have just such good energy. It feels like home. That's
It
the best way I
does.
can
Yeah.
describe it. It
Yeah.
feels like because I was running around with the Republicans all last year, and I'm not gonna lie, they have some positive attributes and they're very nice people. But it was like I never quite felt at home with them. And with the libertarians, I feel like home.
Yeah, I went to a event at the Shell. My first time at the Shell, that was a couple months ago, and while I was there, really having that experience with all these amazing people, it's almost like you've never met these people, but they immediately become some of your best friends. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, what other community out there in the United States is like this anymore? Maybe the Mormons, but like
Hmm.
this kind of community and like friendly neighborhood feel doesn't really exist in the United States anymore. And you go to these events, everyone's extremely friendly. Everyone always offers help. Everyone networking too. People are like. I'm a welder. I'll come over do some welding for you if you need that. I know how to get discounts at this place or something like that. Everyone's helping each other out. Um, you know, Jody Underwood, Bardo Farms, she comes out to a lot of events, and they've got an awesome CSA farm over there. And they always, sometimes we do dinners, and they bring over some fresh meat from over there, and it's like the best thing ever. And there's no experience like that anywhere else. It's only in the Free State movement.
No, and I mean it's also weird because it was like when I first started getting involved in it, and even still now, to be honest, it's like the amount that people help out each other and support each other is weird to me because it's just not what I'm used to in other political situations. But then it makes sense too because it's like people are selecting to be a part of this.
Yeah. It, a lot of free staters say the lucky ones are born here in New Hampshire and the smart ones move.
Hmm.
So, yeah, people definitely want to be a part of this. We're creating a really amazing thing here. And yeah, it's like starting to hit critical mass. And that's why Democrats here are getting scared. We control the majority of the majority party here in the state house. We're really on the offensive. in terms of like the culture war, and in terms of public policy and opinion here. You know, we're on the offensive. We're setting the agenda, not them. We're not being reactionary. We are making them be reactionary, and that's probably why they're coming out with these really hostile takes too, with the parasite thing and calling people extremists and stuff like that.
No, it's totally true. Like the budget for last legislative session was basically like that was like a libertarian budget.
Mm-hmm.
We're like the only state that cut spending, I think, in our budget.
Yeah. We were the only state in 2020 to actually cut spending. Amazing. And it's it's really strange too, the way like tyranny has been progressing here in the United States, and to live in a place that has been turned into something that's more free than in the past. You know, growing up, like we didn't have constitutional carry when I was turned 18, right, and I could apply for a carry permit here in New Hampshire. We didn't have it, and then immediately went away.
Yep. So, okay, hang on. I just had a question, and then I was like trying to pay attention to the Zoom and make sure I wasn't missing anything. So like maybe we can explain to people who don't, who might be tuning in and they aren't familiar with this. But a lot of the Republicans that are state
Yeah.
representatives, they're not like they're Liberty Republicans. They're basically like they're libertarians. They ran up to say they're libertarians. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely correct. Yeah, New Hampshire, the politics game is totally different than anywhere else here in the United States. Um, you know, I'm not gonna say all, right, but
Not all.
for the most part, right, in other states, right, for the most part, all the Republicans are, like your neocons, people who are believe in really strongly in like the Bush ideas and stuff like that. Might be a little bit of war hawk in them. It's going down, I think we've seen, but it's totally different here in New Hampshire. Um, like I was saying, the majority of the majority party, which is the Republican Party, are Liberty Republicans, we call them, and they're essentially libertarians that run with the R ticket, and they get elected. They have a lot of success, and they do great things.
In fact, the state rep that introduced the anti-CRT bill that Chris Sununu totally screwed up, it's a free stater.
Yeah,
Keith Ammon's a free stater, technically a Republican. What else do
majority
people?
majority leader of the New Hampshire House Republicans is a free stater, Jason Osborne from Auburn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people think, and I get so pissed off when Republicans run around and they're like, "New Hampshire's a blue state. New Hampshire's a blue state." Like it's purple at best.
Well, I mean, it's blue state in federal elections for sure,
Yes,
right? And
but
federal
at the
elections are
local.
Yeah, federal elections are elected by popular vote, right? And
Mm-hmm.
our government is made up of essentially the popular vote of each individual town. So it varies town by town here in New Hampshire, but for the most part, people already have that liberty culture. Live free or die is on our license plates. I say it all the time, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it's one of the best sayings out there. And so people already have like a libertarian liberty culture. And so most towns, when they have a Liberty GOP, they all flock to that person, and they do amazing stuff. You always have the establishment GOP that do milquetoast stuff, get nothing done, and let the left and the Democrats take more and more power.
Mm-hmm. Now, Salty Panther says the Libertarian Party went woke.
Yes, and we're working on that with the
They're
Mises
working on it
Caucus. Yeah,
very hard.
yeah, we're doing great things here. The Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, we are not woke at all. We are probably the most based Libertarian Party out there.
In fact, they tried to take over our party because they hate us so much,
Yeah,
and they lost. They lost in epic fashion.
initiated a coup, right?
Mm-hmm.
The libertarians, whose entire philosophy is on non-aggression, right, and initiating force, right? These people went out, broke our main tenant, and initiated a coup against us. So
Yep. And they lost. And they're still so bitter about losing. It's glorious. But no, the New Hampshire Libertarian Party is not woke. They're actual libertarians. Give it a couple more months, the Libertarian Party will begin to become libertarian again.
Memorial Day weekend,
Mm-hmm.
Reno. That's when the national convention for the Libertarian Party is, and we're hopefully going to fix that.
I'm going to Reno regardless of whether or not I'm a delegate. I'd like to be a delegate, but I'm going regardless. I don't care. I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. My big thing, I would like to be a delegate, but if Dennis isn't able to get a delegate seat, I will happily sacrifice my seat as a delegate to make sure Dennis goes. He's been
Dennis should
involved.
definitely go.
Yeah, he's been involved with Libertarian Party for so long. He has put in so much work and effort. He deserves to go.
Yeah. That's part of why I'm like, I don't really even care if I'm, because like, I mean, there's so many people that have been involved before me. I'm like, if they want to be delegates, they should be delegates. I'll just go and hang out. You guys can go and vote and do whatever you need to do. What are the gun laws like in New Hampshire? Denver is making my home state of Colorado into a little California, and I'm sadly losing my love of my birth state. Derek, can you tell us about the gun laws in New Hampshire? Because this is not an area I'm educated on.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, in terms of what kind of firearms you're allowed to possess, really the only thing stopping you is the NFA. So, I mean, nullification is important. We got to work on that. We have constitutional carry here in New Hampshire. You don't need any kind of permit or licensing to freely carry a firearm, open or concealed. Right? Doesn't matter. You know, in a vehicle, you're allowed to have firearms in your vehicle. Trying to think of maybe some other stuff too.
You can now have a firearm on a snowmobile.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, that was a something that the authoritarians found as a loophole to try and enforce, but we fixed it, right? We're always trying to improve. No one's perfect, and we always got to make ourselves better.
I love it. Jared says, I hear Concord and Manchester have large numbers of Free State Project members living there, but employers looking into this now because my plan is to move. Yeah, Jared wants to come to New Hampshire. He wants to be a Free Stater. So I mean, the employer situation is I like if you like I would probably look more around Manchester, but it's getting a little dicey. Can you talk about some of this, Derek? What do you think?
Well, I mean, already, right? The culture here in New Hampshire's liberty-minded. So I'd probably say if you put your feelers out, called some businesses, ask specifically about mandates and stuff like that, you'll get some answers. And some people will say, I don't care no matter what the federal government says. Some people might be in the process of enforcing it, or some people might be riding that line. They're like, well, I mean, if we have to enforce it, then we'll just do the testing. But right, you just got to ask around, figure it out. There are so many hiring signs out there. You can definitely find a job in any industry here in New Hampshire, and we got it all in New Hampshire. We got manufacturing, we got technology, we've got agriculture, we've got it all. So whatever you are involved in, come here, check us out, ask a Free Stater. I mean, I just had the other day, someone messaged me on Twitter. They're like, do you know how this company's policy is on the mandate? And I was like, I'll go find out for you. I gave him a call today. They weren't doing the mandate, texted him back on Twitter, and now he's applying for that job.
Yeah, and we are one of the states that has joined in to the lawsuit to sue the Biden administration over this whole thing. But thankfully, just yesterday, a federal court put a halt to it. So hopefully the courts will actually start to fix things. Let's see. Got a few more minutes here before we get started. I'm still waiting for the host to start the webinar. Yeah, I saw a chat I want to bring up. Shannon says, shout out to Karen Ann Harlows for helping us. Yes, shout out to Karen Ann, who apparently has unofficially, but officially lost her appeal to be reinstated, which is bullshit.
Absolutely bullshit, yeah.
And will be rectified in Reno.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, I see people talking about the winters in the chat. Like, it's really not that bad. It's really not. A, it doesn't actually get as cold as people think. B, they do a really good job at taking care of the roads. Like, I moved here from Vermont. Vermont sucks at taking care of the roads. New Hampshire does a really, really, really good job.
Yeah. You've got maybe like late January, mid to late January and early February where it might hit negatives in single digits. But other than that, it's not going to get that cold. I mean, ultimately, what's more important, wearing a jacket or being free? So,
Mm-hmm. Plus, the falls here are beautiful. The summer here is beautiful. Okay.
The fall is the most
recording
beautiful.
in progress
For now, and then I'll restart it.
Yeah.
Okay. It's started. Hang on. Let me see if
I don't have permission to do
stream.
it, so.
Hang on.
All
I
right.
can
Okay.
make
Oh,
you
Lou's
a
here.
make you a co-host.
Hey, Lou. Oh, I'm just putting the Zoom up.
I'm not here. I'm at work.
Oh, of course you are. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Guys, tell me if we
Okay.
can hear the sound. Okay. They're
Okay,
just kind of like
Katie.
trying to figure it
You
out
should
right now.
have that.
Recording stopped.
Okay.
Zoom is not liking me.
Oh, the sound's working. Awesome.
Sorry.
For anyone who's tuning in early, we're just waiting for everybody to gather to come in before we start the program.
So maybe we can try to let them like dig their own grave, unless you guys have like a really funny comment to make. So for everyone in the chat, while we're waiting for them to kind of get started here, I'm going to try to keep as quiet as I can on this webinar because I want to let them talk, but I'll be chatting in some thoughts as we make our way along, and I'll share thoughts on the screen. Like I'll do this. I'll share chats, and then maybe we can do some commentary afterwards or something.
Roger, I'm going to start
Yeah.
recording.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome. Zoom meeting, and there's a reason for that. One is that we find it distracting for the speakers and for the audience, and also we are aware that there are a number of people on tonight, and we don't need the distracting comments. So instead, it's being replaced by a Q&A button. So I would ask that you be patient. A lot of people have questions that are automatically answered later on by the speaker's presentation. So I would say, ask you to hold your questions towards the end of the program. And if there's still something that hasn't been covered, then by all means, feel free to enter it into the chat and it will be submitted to the panelists. My name is Roger Wassard. I'm the chairman of the Hillsborough County Democratic Committee. And it's my distinct honor to introduce our host tonight, who's Kermit Williams, who's a former member of the House, spent several years in the House from the town of Wilton, and is currently on the Hillsborough County Democratic Executive Committee and has been for a number of years. And with without any further ado, I'll be back at the end of the program to make a couple of more announcements, but right now I'll hand things over to Kermit. Kermit, take it away.
Thanks, Roger. And it's my distinct honor and privilege to introduce Caitlin Rollo. And Caitlin lives in Hopkinton, and she's a community activist and union organizer. Her roots as a community organizer began by being a student activist upset about the conditions of her local public schools in Manchester. Caitlin was also the only girl in the state, at least in one year, when she played Babe Ruth baseball with the boys in Goffstown. And she was also the youngest female elected official in the country while serving in the New Hampshire House of Representatives while she was in college at UNH. She's currently on the board of the Merrimack County Democrat Committee, Open Democracy for Action, and 603 Forward. And on a personal note, I've had the opportunity both in the legislature and elsewhere to observe Caitlin and her husband, Mike, in all of their advocacy on a variety of topics. And I can say that we are extraordinarily lucky to have them both in New Hampshire and both in the Democratic Party. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thanks so much. And it's nice to see you again and to be back with the Hillsborough County Dems, which I was actually a member of. Said this before to some folks. I was a member of the Hillsborough County Democratic Committee back when Manchester was actually part, and we were all one big group. But anyways, it's glad to be back. And so tonight, for our agenda, real quickly, we're going to kind of start us off with where are we now, what's happening, what does the current landscape look like here in New Hampshire, what does it look like nationally, then kind of dig into what is this libertarian Republican vision for our state, what organizations are moving this agenda here in New Hampshire. Then we'll dig in a little bit with this Free State Project and sort of what are their goals, who are they, what are they about, and then kind of flip it and say, hey, how do we stop this attack on our democracy? What does it look like? What can we do to take action and bring us back to our communities, bring us back to our roots, and then get into some Q&A. So real quickly, what we're seeing nationally, not just here in New Hampshire, is I just want to bring us back to the start of the year, right after President Biden took office, and Mitch McConnell laid out his plans for this is how we're going to win back in 2022. This is what we're going to do. And what it was they're going to sow chaos and confusion at our local school district level with all of what was happening with COVID. Are schools going back? What does schools going back look like? Are there masks? Are there not masks? And sort of that is something that we've seen play out across the country in school districts and school boards, just this toxic level. And a lot of it was manufactured for a specific cause and for a specific reason. And it was for the 2022 elections and beyond. And so the way that we're seeing it play out here in New Hampshire is we have our friends with the Americans for Prosperity holding training, saying, hey, this is how you can have public testimony at your local school board meeting. We have events where our other friends there with Freedom Works, which is another national group here that has some libertarian ties, saying, hey, parents, come learn more, come get your rights back. And then we have our esteemed education commissioner who also is beating this drum with some intent as to really kind of reshape what public education looks like in this country. What does it mean to have public education? But on top of it, with eyes for 2022. So all of it has a lot of political, personal reasons to this work that they're doing.
Yeah, so they want each state to move New Hampshire closer to that libertarian paradise that they dreamed of in the beginnings of the Free State Project. And they imagine, that New Hampshire would be a state that stands apart from all the other states around us in support of their values and their goals. And that, of course, ignores the fact that New Hampshire has much more in common with Massachusetts and Maine and Vermont. We have shared jobs, we have shared resources, and And for many of us, we have a shared heritage. But instead, the current libertarian response to critics is, well, if you don't like it, leave. They'd like a state where more libertarian Republicans move in and we all go somewhere else. So we just need to make sure we don't do that.
For sure, for sure. And so part of, knowing and understanding this and not giving in is sort of understanding what is this libertarian Republican vision for New Hampshire. And at the root of it, not just here in New Hampshire, but nationally, is privatization and the limits on collective power. Now, when people see collective power, they're going to instantly think labor unions, but it's not just labor unions. It's breaking down those institutions within our communities. It's school boards. It's breaking those down. What are those groups? It's breaking down PTAs. Like, it's really making it a very, very individualized society, sort of a gig economy, but really within each of our communities. And so really long term, that is really what they're working towards, along with some of those other pieces of how do you get there and what does it look like when you're thinking through dismantling certain pieces of our democracy. And interwoven in all of this is also voting rights and what does that look like in the access to the ballot. So here in New Hampshire, the way we've seen it play out for some of their real big goals for these libertarian Republicans, more specifically over the past decade or so, and Kermit can attest to this and what he's seen in the legislature, is a real intent on abolishing taxes and regulations, defunding and privatizing public education incrementally over time. First, it started with homeschooling. Then it moved into some let's study this issue. Then it moved into let's get this bill in. And so over time, they're just incrementally moving that needle to reshape what it looks like in our communities for children to have access to an education. Putting limits on the access to the ballot box. This is something that they really beat the drums around. Voter fraud, that never truly really pans out. And really what it's about is really making it so that less folks are interested in voting and making it harder for folks to vote. And what does that look like? These voter ID laws, all of that is interwoven into this libertarian Republican agenda, not just here in New Hampshire, but nationally. And then, of course, like I said before, it's abolishing labor unions. We had on the national stage the Janus decision, which got rid of agency fee shops for labor unions. But it's also, like I said before, more recently over the past couple of weeks, we've seen some real push from these libertarian Republican groups, not just here in New Hampshire, but across the country, to have state school board associations disaffiliate with their national. So it's really, once again, getting back to, and where I talked before, limits on collective power. It's breaking down those pieces of where we have community and where we've created community within our own towns, within our own cities.
So I wanted to drill into taxes a little bit, because I think people should understand that taxes are a zero-sum game. As it is right now, we squeeze our school budgets. We're underfunded in almost every state service, and we spend way too little on things like transportation. New Hampshire's transportation, roads, bridges, public transport, is ranked 41st out of the 50 states. And that's in a country where the whole country is ranked by the Society of Civil Engineers as a C- in terms of the quality of our transportation network. So we're already failing to fund the things that we need to make this place a decent place to live. More cuts will mean more things falling apart. And it's like a game of whack-a-mole. If you cut state taxes, that'll make your property taxes go up. The fat in the state budget was cut out a long time ago, if there ever was any. And so when you cut taxes, you got to find the money somewhere, and the money is in your house and the house across the street. And so you'll see your property taxes go up and up and up if Republicans are allowed to cut the state budget or cut taxes.
Right. And that's, part of getting at sowing that chaos and really stirring into that toxic culture that's being sowed at the national level and bringing it down into our communities. And it's just really not appealing. And it really turns a lot of folks off. But part of that is also a tactic too in suppressing folks from wanting to be engaged in whatever is happening in town. Because quite honestly, who wants to go to a school board meeting these days after what everyone reads? It's like, heck no. But you know what? Folks need to go, and folks need to be engaged, because democracy is what we're about. And that's what we've always been about. Right. So real quick, where are we seeing this happen when we're talking about politics? And what does it look like? So at the federal level, we have what's happening in Congress, some of stall tactics and things like that. On the state level, what we really see is what really, you know, some of these tactics that they've used specifically, say with our budget, of attaching extreme policy that would not have passed on its own through the traditional House and Senate process being attached to our state budget. So a way to move a political agenda through a non-traditional means that, you know, we've never seen policy like that attached to our state budget, like what was attached this year. And then really, once again, really honing in on this big piece is what's happening locally in our communities, and how what we're seeing is coming. It's a lot of it is being manufactured with intent on getting folks ginned up in their towns and communities around something that then can correlate to turning folks out for federal races. So a lot of it is moving up and down that political spectrum. So, you know, CRT has little to nothing to do, actually quite nothing to do with what's happening in schools and in K-12 schools in New Hampshire, yet somehow folks are gonna try to talk about that in the US Senate race or US congressional race, when that's literally graduate level courses that are happening.
At the state level, what we've seen is that libertarians, and for that matter, other conservatives, have been able to get into, especially the state house, because there are 400 seats in that house, and it pays $100 a year. So it's basically a purely volunteer job. And in a lot of parts of New Hampshire, there just aren't that many people that really want to do it. And so someone steps forward and people almost don't even question really what their intent is, what their real goal is. That's why we've ended up with a bunch of people from the Free State Project and other libertarians in the state legislature, even if their goals aren't necessarily the goals of the average person in New Hampshire. And you see the same kind of thing, again, because we're talking about mostly volunteers in local government, select boards and planning boards and zoning boards, because people don't want to do it. People are busy. People have other things that are on their mind, and it can be a lot of hours without any compensation. And so people who have goals, you know, if you wanted to eliminate all the zoning protections that would keep, you know, somebody from ruining your neighborhood, you could just run for zoning board, and then once you get in there, you convince people that, well, you know, this is better for business if you cut all these zoning laws. Those aren't things that most people would support, but the problem is most people aren't paying attention.
Right. And so want to dig in next in talking about some of the ways that these libertarian Republicans are moving their agenda. And so one of the big things, and I got this from someone that used to be part of the libertarian Republican world, someone that really worked for pushing vouchers in several states until he saw, oh my goodness, this isn't what I thought it would be, and it's really about something else. And so what he talked about was sort of how compromise is used by folks, by libertarian Republicans, to move the needle for their next initiative. And that in the end, it's never really a compromise because, like I said, with some of what we've seen with some of these attacks on just public ed, started as homeschooling, and then it goes to what would vouchers look like? Well, let's study that. But it's always incrementally moving the needle further and further down the roads to what the true intent is, which is purely privatization and having a gig economy for our public schools, and what that looks like. And so, and that's just one example. You can pick any other issue and break it down that way. So compromise is, they use it tactically and strategically to get to where they want to be for their end game. And part of the process too is pitting folks against each other. What are we seeing now? Once again, back to our school boards, what are we seeing? There are these entities out there stirring and agitating, pitting people for reasons that just on instinct, they're not even sure, but they need to go and they need to yell and they need to scream and they need their 5 minutes of fame. But also part of it too is the folks doing this have really, really deep pockets. They're well funded. They're coming from national sources for national reasons to move a national agenda here in our state, here in our own communities. It's always important to know they're always coming back for more. For example, we have folks here in my town, follow them on the local town Facebook page. We all have those, right? It's just every year it's something with a core group of folks of what they're against and why the town is horrible, and why, you know, we can't be voting for this budget or that budget. They're just always coming back. And what I've seen more recently, specifically, especially during COVID times, or especially during some of like this real heightened work of really getting folks ginned up for the 2022 election, is they've created a like a statewide network of Facebook, easy to pull Facebook posts that are really divisive and really are meant to like get folks aggravated and agitated, that then they're sharing out into our community Facebook pages. And it's really quite toxic. And you know, I find it very unappealing. And I'm a political beast. I get it. I understand politics, but it's just very, very, very toxic.
Yeah, so like a lot of conservative movements, the Republican libertarians reduce much of their campaign to tag words and slogans, because they really struggle to coherently state why you should support their goals. And so slogans are easier to remember and easier to kind of paste on a bumper sticker. You know, so for instance, they'll describe Democrats of any stripe as socialists. And, you know, if you've studied politics like Caitlin and I, you know that socialism means that the government owns the means of production. And that's mainly what socialism means. We don't have socialism in the United States anywhere. We have goals that involve sharing. You know, I always find it funny because the Republicans point to the Constitution and talk about why, you know, the New Hampshire Constitution and why, you know, it protects their Second Amendment rights and so forth. But to me, the most important part of the New Hampshire Constitution is Part 1, Article 3. And what that says is that when men enter into a state of society, they surrender up some of their natural rights to that society in order to ensure that the protection of others, without such an equivalent, the surrender is void. I mean, it isn't all about freedom, even though that's what the libertarians would tell you.
Right. I mean, let's think about it, Kermit, right? We have, in most of our towns and communities, we have what? The selectman and the what? Overseer of the poor, right?
Yeah.
It's the selectman and the overseer of the poor in a lot of our communities, those positions. Those are their titles, because the fact of the matter is our last safety net that we have here in our state is in our own home communities. And when someone can't pay their rents, or when someone can't pay their heat bill, or if someone can't pay their water bill, where are they going? And if anyone served on town government, they know where they're going and they know why.
Yeah, one of the favorite phrases used in the legislature last year was taxation is theft, which is really, it was an anarchist slogan, and I don't think any of us, would support anarchy. In fact, I doubt even the Republicans support anarchy. In fact, they kind of say the anarchists are the ones that were against them, at rallies. But I'm struck by the connections between the Tea Party, which seems to have kind of faded away, and libertarians in New Hampshire. And I don't know if they still use it, but the most famous saying by Grover Norquist, who was a Tea Party advocate, was, "I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I can drag it into the bathroom and drown it in the bathtub." And that's really what libertarians want. But you can look around the world and you can see the chaos that comes from failed government. And on the other hand, one of my favorite quotes, and I'll wrap up with this, is from Christopher Hitchens. And he said, "I always found it quaint and rather touching that there is a movement, the libertarians in the US, that thinks Americans are not yet selfish enough."
Right. So to think about that, some of the organizations that we have here moving the libertarian Republican agenda, we have this group of folks, a very small group of folks that have moved here, and we'll dig into them slightly in a little bit, called the Free State Project. We have the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, which was an entity that was created by this small group of folks once they chose New Hampshire as their state that they would be creating a libertopia in. And they operate purely at the state level, focusing on the state house. You have the House Republican Alliance. These are folks that operate as well at the state house. You have the Josiah Bartlett Center, which is a think tank, a libertarian Republican think tank. You have Americans for Prosperity. That's the sort of the group that does the phone banking, the door knocking, sending out millions of dollars of mail in our local and state elections. They're funded from national donors. You have the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is a conglomerate of corporations and other special interests that come together to draft model bills that then they hand to legislators and lawmakers to help advance their own personal causes at the state level. You have our two different kinds of taxpayer groups that you can see play out in your towns. They kind of intertwine. Some I lose track of which one's which because I think they have a fight over what name is what. You have the Grant State Taxpayers, and you have the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We have this new group called Make Liberty Win, dumped over $1 million into state rep and state senate races this past time around, created by one of these folks that moved here as part of this Free State Project. And then you have Rebuild New Hampshire, which is another one of those, or Reopen New Hampshire, or whatever their name is, that are moving some of these works. So these are some of the names that folks may be familiar with, or that they've seen or have heard about over time.
And a lot of these have a specific influence in the New Hampshire legislature. The Liberty Alliance and some of the other groups, for instance, will do a scorecard of all elected officials, and it's pretty black and white that if you're a Republican and you vote on the 20 or 30 bills that they think are most important, you get an A, and if you are a Democrat and you don't vote for them, you get an F, for. In some cases, they call you a constitutional threat. And it isn't really. It's so ham-handed that it really doesn't give a reasonable voter of any stripe, conservative or liberal or in between, much information on how to make a choice. It's really just, well, either you voted for the things we like, or you're a constitutional threat. And organizations like ALEC, which is a national organization, they are very popular among the Republicans because they write bills, and Republican, or well, all of our legislators get $100 a year. We have no staff. You know, nobody's going to write bills for us. And so if you're not capable of putting together something that is a reasonable proposal to change the New Hampshire law, well, you just go to a group like ALEC and they'll say, well, this passed in Texas, so you might want to do it here in New Hampshire, as we're seeing in some of the proposals that are coming forward. But, you know, a lot of these groups, as Caitlin said, you know, there's outside funding and there's outside influence. And it's really an effort to make New Hampshire kind of look like something a lot different than every other state in New England, and a lot different than I think most of us thought this place was when we came to live here.
Right, and they've created what would be sort of what we call an echo chamber for all of these different ideas and values. And I know my hand's a little fuzzy, but it's, I talk with my hands. I say this when I talk to groups. So Zoom is a little awkward. So, but they've created a way where, so you have that bill that was not really your idea, although a lot of times they pitch it as, I had this really great idea. It happens to look exactly the same as the bill being introduced in Florida, being introduced in Iowa, being introduced in Texas. That then you have the House Republican Alliance will say, this is a good bill. Josiah Bartlett will do some research on it and get it out there in the news to say, oh, what a great bill this is. And then you have these other groups that will, you know, when they go knocking on doors or sending out their mailers, they'll say, didn't you hear? Kermit was a constitutional threat for this bill that ALEC drafted, and Make Liberty Win is sending a mailer out for. So this is how, you know, just as a visual for everyone to understand of how a bill makes it through the sausage process in this libertarian Republican infrastructure that's been created here in our state.
And all you have to do is just Google a sentence out of some of these bills, and it'll pop up in Texas or Mississippi or somewhere where ALEC holds sway. And, you know, in New Hampshire, they don't even bother to try to change a few of the words to make it sound unique.
No, the best is when there's typos and the bill drafters try to fix it, and then the legislator's like, why'd you do that? Anyways, moving along. So now what we want to do is to pause for a moment, travel back in time to an audio clip from 2001. And let me share my sound here.
Thank you, Jason. We'd like to remind our radio audience that our guest speaker tonight is Mr. Jason Sorens, founder and president of the Free State Project. This program is brought to you by the Patriots of the Republic Room on Pal Talk Internet in conjunction with Mel Pike's Crusade Radio, the most informative radio on the Internet. And the next question comes from Carol Ann. Carol Ann, take the mic.
Thank you, Jinx. I'd like to remind everyone that today, September 17th, is the 215th anniversary of the signing of the Constitution, and how appropriate that we'd be talking about real freedom this day. Jason, I would like to ask this question. Your eventual goal is to cut the size of government by 2/3. Will your 20,000 person force still be able to outvote the displaced government workers and those who will be deprived of government services in that state?
I think so. We've done a lot of research on exactly what 20,000 activists could accomplish, and what we found is that 20,000 activists could generate majorities in states up to about 1.2 million in population, and this is based on campaign finance expenditures, electoral results from other countries, and so on. Just to give one example of how this was calculated, the Libertarian Party in the year 2000 had a budget of 5.2 million and about 40,000 members. So we ourselves, with 20,000 members, should be able to raise about half that amount each year. So we've looked at states where Democrats and Republicans have spent less than about 5 million every election cycle. And those are states where just us 20,000, where we can outspend the entire opposition. And as you know, spending correlates very well with electoral success. So if we can actually outspend both the Democrats and Republicans combined, then we'll be in a great position for success. Now, I should note, I say outspend both Democrats and Republicans, but it may end up that we do work within the Republican Party and sort of infiltrate it from the inside and bring it over to our own perspective. That's one option we're considering right now. It really depends on the state we choose. Now, as for the displaced government workers, once we start making our reforms, we have to be ready to encounter some kind of opposition. But we also have to remember that these people will eventually have to be leaving our state. If they can't get jobs, then the freeloaders, so to speak, are going to have to go somewhere else. And that will improve our electoral position because the people left will be the productive people, the taxpayers, people who have jobs, are making money, who own property. So I think the idea of displacing government workers actually helped us.
All right, so that was an audio clip of Jason Sorens, who is the person that came up with this idea of the Free State Project as part of his college work. And what the idea was to move 20,000 libertarians to achieve liberty in your lifetime. And one of their main focuses in doing this would be doing it via the electoral process at the state level. Now, as part of this, I'll dig in a second of how New Hampshire was picked. What did this look like? Actually, I'll dig in now real quick. Do you want to add anything, Kermit, thoughts of that audio clip or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the audio clip basically says New Hampshire, you know, the typical New Hampshire voter is lazy. That, you know, there is more than 1 million registered voters in New Hampshire. And Jason Sorens is saying that 20,000 people can come in here and essentially, you know, do more than the 1 million people who already live here. Now, the reality is they haven't come close to getting 20,000 people. But I think the only way that they succeed at all is because we let them succeed.
Exactly. So what is this Free State Project? Some folks may have heard of it, maybe why they popped on to the call today to find out more. So this was, like I said, an idea that came out of a college student's thesis, I believe, to move 20,000 people to a state to achieve liberty in their lifetime, create a libertarian utopia. And so after it was posted online in 2001, it started to gain some steam, and a lot of the folks on the national stage within the libertarian Republican infrastructure really found it fascinating and really sort of liked the idea. And so as it started to get some steam, a lot of like some real ideologues bought into the idea, and they went through a meticulous process of trying to choose a state, and they ended up landing on New Hampshire for several different reasons. One of the main reasons was, well, we border Canada. Another one is we have a port, and another one is our governor at the time, Craig Benson, remember, the only one-term governor that we've had in decades, opened them up, welcomed them with open arms and said, come on in, you know, let's achieve this libertarian oasis. So as part of that, they started to create some infrastructures of saying, okay, how do we actually do this? What does this look like? And part of it was signing a pledge to say that you would move to a state with the intent to achieve liberty in your lifetime. And part of the reason why they went through that process of having people sign a pledge to commit to uprooting their entire lives to move to a state for their political ideology was because they knew that they would get the people that were the extremes. Like, they were the extreme, they held this extreme ideology that if I literally sign this pledge, we pick a state, I'm going to uproot my life and move it to that state. And then once I get to that state, I'm going to work really, really hard to get it to look what I want it to look like. And so if you go through some of the history of some of the old files that they have, you can see how they made the national network. 2003, they picked New Hampshire. After 2003, once they selected New Hampshire, they created that group that I touched on slightly in the previous slide, the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, which is a group that was created by them to really focus on their libertarian goals that would be happening at the state house. And then as they started to have some of these folks that were some of the early pledge signers that were part of the 5,000 that helped to pick a state, once those folks uprooted their entire lives for this political ideology and moved to our state, they started to get out, hit the ground running. They started to work within the Republican networks that were in state. They realized real quick that, yeah, we kind of had a third party. Yeah, there was kind of a libertarian party, but the way to go was really to work within the New Hampshire Republican Party. So a lot in the early or mid 2000s, some of those tax cap initiatives that we saw pop up in our cities across the state, those were a lot of efforts that were led by these early free stater movers that kind of teamed up with Republicans, and they were sort of the folks that would knock on the doors to do the work. They'd make the phone calls, they'd get out there, and they really worked for their cause. But as they were doing that, they were, you go out, you knock on doors, you're making phone calls, you start to gain influence within a circle. And Republicans really liked that they had these folks that were willing to knock doors for them or willing to make phone calls. And then right around, I would say probably 2010, with that election and other things, they really started to ramp up this libertarian echo chamber with, as Kermit kind of mentioned, I think earlier, with the Tea Party movement. So there started to be a real cross-pollination in state between not just these early Free State Project movers, and there's a few that have trickled in afterwards, but you also had the Tea Party that popped up. You had the Glenn Beck 912 group in 2010 that popped up, and all these other little conservative groups that kind of banded together and did some cross-pollination. Now, another thing about the Free Staters and the Free State Project is while they're working on uprooting their lives and moving to our state and working locally in political offices or to help elect folks or to move their agenda for whatever their issues are, whether, I don't know, one of the early Free State movers does a lot with marijuana policy and things like that. On the same token, prior to them even selecting a state, they really knew that if this was going to work and this is something that we really wanted to do and really wanted to achieve, we need to create a structure to help our pledge signers uproot their entire lives and move someplace. And so what they have is, and they started creating it before they even selected New Hampshire, is they have a way and a process for folks to say, hey, yay, New Hampshire was selected. Yay, I want to move to New Hampshire. So from the moment someone says, hey, I want to move, they can go on a job board and find jobs. They can say, all right, I found a job, I'm ready to move. And they can go on another board and find a place where they can rent a house that's owned by a Free Stater, or they can buy a house from the realtor that's a Free Stater, or, whatever it looks like, or you can sort of rent a room until you decide what you want to do when you get here. And so, Kermit decides, hey, I'm going to uproot my entire life and I'm going to move to New Hampshire to achieve liberty in my lifetime. So Kermit signed the pledge. He signals, hey, I'm moving. He posts on Facebook, hey, just want to let everyone know I found my job through the postings. I'm moving this weekend. Thank you, Mark Warren, for helping me find a house. And then he says, I'm moving this weekend. The Free Staters, woo! All right, welcome wagon's going to pull on up and we're going to help move you in. And then once you're moved in, as you're moving in, they're going to say, all right, don't you forget, we have a meetup. So come to our meetup. And so this is a way that they've really created a really small community of these folks that have moved here with their ideology. But they've created a community in this mindset of establishing liberty in our lifetime. Do you have anything to add, Kermit?
Yeah, so the original rationale that Jason Sorens had for doing this was that libertarians basically were not very successful. There were, no, at least at the congressional level or beyond, really anybody who ever got elected with the libertarian after their name. I mean, Ron Paul, you might make an argument, was kind of a libertarian, but he ran as a Republican. And really, there just weren't that many people that ascribed to their view of the world. But there were a few here and there. And so Jason's concept was, if we can get all the libertarians in one place, then we can be successful. And I think they picked New Hampshire. We talked a little bit about how our legislature is unique, both underpaid and way too big, maybe. But that made it possible for some committed volunteers to basically come in and make inroads. And the other thing that they did was they looked for opportunities, again, even within little towns, to coalesce, so you coalesce as many libertarians into New Hampshire as possible. And then within New Hampshire, you pick places to coalesce there. And so I don't want to tell the whole story because I want you to read the book. There's a book called A Libertarian Walks into a Bear, which is a wonderful book about the Free State Project and what, a subset of it that they called the Free Town Project. And it kind of, I think, speaks against the sort of the view that libertarians or free staters can come here and all get great jobs, and Jason's concept that after the government workers lose their jobs, they're freeloaders and they'll all move somewhere else. If you read A Libertarian Walks into a Bear, what you'll see is that lots of people came here and they really didn't have necessarily marketable skills and didn't know what they were going to do. They were living in tents and in trailers, and so a lot of them ended up in a town called Grafton, which isn't very big, and it was kind of a mess. And because so many of them moved to Grafton, they actually did have control over the Grafton town budget and how Grafton did a lot of things. They eliminated the fire department, for instance. Well, what happens then? Somebody's house catches on fire and there's nobody to put it out. They had to call, other towns, and by the time the other towns got there, the house burns down. So yeah, they can get together, and they can, if they get in a small enough place, and I'd like to believe that New Hampshire isn't small enough for them to take over. But in a small enough place like Grafton, they can actually bring in their ideas and make the changes, eliminate taxes and reduce services and all those kinds of things. But I think if you read this book, you'll see it really doesn't work out. And that's, what I'm hoping that will eventually be the end result, and what the Free State Project will realize is that it doesn't work out for them either.
Right. And one of the things that I haven't had a chance to read the book, I have it, that Mike said was that even John Babiars, who was one of our big name libertarians in state, has been exiled by this group because he was sort of like, whoa. You mean like no government? Like no fire department? This is not good. This isn't safe.
Yeah, he thought some services at least were important.
Right. Well, that's where you get into the differences between limited government and no government, right? I think all of us believe in some form of government and what that looks like, and have, like, if we can operate off of that same base knowledge. But I think part of the hard part that is happening, you know, with some folks that have hit up with some of these folks that have moved here to our state that have run either on a local level or even some of the folks at the state level, is they're hitting up against a wall where it's sort of like you have an extreme ideologue that actually kind of doesn't really believe in government, or the form of government that we all of us as a base level know and understand, and can kind of bicker back and forth on these tiny little pieces.
We create a government to provide a framework for how we live and how we work with each other. You know, it kind of goes back to that article from the New Hampshire Constitution that I read. And you know, there are things that we all need. We help people to help them improve their lives so that they can make a better contribution to society. And whether that's by providing them education or providing them health care or access to housing or something else. I mean, those are things that make everybody better, because it makes the people that you live with, your neighbors and your friends and the other people that live in your town, more successful. And that's what government does. Government isn't there to drain your pocketbook and you know, give money to fat cats. It's there to make things better for you and the people that you live with.
Right. I know. I enjoy having my roads plowed, quite frankly.
Yep.
I enjoy not hitting potholes in basic services like that. I enjoy having a transfer station to bring my garbage to, right?
And as it is, we don't spend enough money. I mean, I was talking about transportation before. So in Wilton, we have 4 bridges actually that are on the red list. You know, and we're a fairly small town, so that's a lot of money for bridges. And the state has put the same amount of money into the red list since 1993, and yet the cost of fixing bridges has gone up dramatically since 1993. I mean, labor and materials and engineering and all those kinds of things have risen by orders of magnitude. And the state has, the solution to that was not to say, okay, we need to fix the bridges, we need to fix more bridges. Instead, the solution was, we'll just shut down the red list. You know, so today, if a bridge is failing, you can't even get it on a list for the state to look at it. And if it's on the bottom of the red list right now, it might be 10 or 12 years before that gets fixed. So, you know, transportation, being able to get from one side of a river to the other, that's one of the most important things for people who live in a town or a city. I mean, that's why bridges were among the first things built when people moved here as settlers. And yet, you know, we don't seem to feel like as a state that it's important to spend enough money so it's safe, so that, you know, a busload of kids on their way to school don't fall through the bridge and into the river.
Exactly. And I mean, it's one of those things too to also keep in mind, like how far some things have maybe even turned. Like when people, I think, stop for a moment and think through the presentation of when some folks are maybe voting for Republicans, they're thinking of like a Yankee Republican, a traditional Republican, or even like, you know, let's go back to an Eisenhower Republican, right? It's sort of, you know, he did the Eisenhower interstate system. Like, where have we gone and where has the shift happened and why? So to kind of get at that sort of the here and now, like, hey, let's go back to 2020, just last year, and talk about some of these tactics that they've used to sort of move the needle to get to their end game and some of their goals here with the Libertarian Republicans here in state. And so what they had, they really created that coordinated state house agenda by those different organizations. Kermit kind of hit on it when he talked about the report cards that they have. So you have that model bill, you have the report card, and then what they do is they then flip that into knocking on doors or making phone calls or sending the mail pieces. It's more Right. Frankly, from what I can see, it's more of the mail pieces that got sent out than the actual having conversations with community members about what was happening. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, the knocking on doors, they basically had the field to themselves because in 2020, as most of you remember, we actually had a pandemic, and so
We'll have a pandemic.
So we still have a pandemic, yeah. But in 2020, I think that Democrats felt like going up to someone's house and knocking on their door and standing in the doorway and talking to them was not really very fair to those people, because if they didn't know you, they wouldn't necessarily know whether you were careful, whether you were coming in carrying COVID germs and could therefore transmit COVID to them. And so Democrats in general didn't do door knocking. Republicans and libertarians, and especially the Free State group, really didn't care about any of that. And so they just went knocking on doors. And so they had the whole field to themselves. It made a big difference. It made a big difference.
Right. Right. And so once again, to highlight sort of these groups that would focus more of what's happening at the state level, because remember, going back to Free Staters, their ideal of like, how are we going to create our libertopia? It was specifically focusing at one chamber of a state legislature to really move their core beliefs. And how do you do that? And so all of these groups here, you have the Liberty Alliance, Republican Alliance, Josiah Bartlett, all of these different groups here. At one time, aside from the Liberty Alliance, they've always had the Free Staters. At one time, they would have, like I touched on before, some traditional Republicans from New Hampshire, or Yankee Republicans, like a Judd Gregg or a Charlie Bass or something like that, or one of those kinds of folks would have been on their board on their board. But what you see now, when you go and look at who makes up these organizations, who's on their board, you have folks that are these Free Staters that uprooted their entire lives and moved to our state with their extreme ideology. Or in the case of Americans for Prosperity, the person that's their state director is actually on the board for the Free State Project. And one of his first meetings that he had, he talked about, all right, what can I do to help get some national resources in here to help move your cause, move our shared cause?
And most of that money is from the Koch brothers.
Yep. Some of these national libertarian donors, not even libertarian Republicans. So these are the folks back in the 80s have been really funding and donating since then.
I think it'd be interesting to really think about whether there are any of those sort of old-time Republicans still around. I mean, there obviously have to be voters who think more of a Judd Gregg than a Jason Osborne today, but they if they're still involved in politics, I think they must do the strange bedfellows approach, that they see, they're transactional. They see that by working together with these folks who they don't necessarily agree with, it gets them, what they want. But I think, I think back to somebody, and this might date me a little bit, but somebody like Walter Peterson, who was a Republican governor from Peterborough, and someone who really, cared about not just the state, but about the people in the state. And I think, I heard that his widow thought, she wasn't really a Republican anymore, and Walter wouldn't have been if he was still around, that it's just moved so far away from what the Republicans of even the 60s were like in New Hampshire. And that's kind of sad. I mean, I've never wanted to be a Republican, but when Republicans were honorable and cared about some of the same things that I cared about, they were reasonable opponents. And now they seem more like snakes in the grass, something you have to be careful about.
Right. And I think another thing to talk about and touch on too is how starting in 2010, there was a real concerted effort to really, specifically at the State House, sort of within the Republican ranks, knock out those traditional folks. And so as time's gone on, where we used to, there was, when I was in the House and it was before Democrats had any majority, some of my closest friends and allies were actually Republicans, and the toxic sounds was such a small minority, a small caucus within the Republican caucus. And now it seems like that kind of extreme ideology or the ideologueness that kind of goes along with this libertarian Republican. Is that what the culture is like when you're at the State House, when you were at the State House most recently?
Yeah, I mean,
polarizing.
The thing was definitely polarizing, and like I was saying earlier, you know, the most common phrase I think I heard in speeches from Republicans on the House floor was taxation is theft. But the other thing that really strikes me about, especially how things went this year, and I am not there this year, so I can't say in detail how things work, but I look at what happened with the abortion bills, the changes to state abortion law, and libertarian perspective. You know, they believe in personal freedom, and they believe in you should be able to do things with your body or with your money or with your whatever the way you want to. But yet they were willing to vote for these really restrictive abortion laws because they got transactions. They got things that benefited them from the evangelical Republicans, and there's still a good chunk of evangelical Republicans out there. You know, neither one of them are Walter Peterson Republicans as far as I can see, but they each have the, you know, kind of their own agenda and their own perspective. And to me, I would be embarrassed if I was a libertarian who voted to support such a restrictive abortion law, because to me, it walks right over the key tenets of being libertarian.
Right. And, you know, to kind of touch on that, let's sort of think about sort of how these folks that are currently in power got there. And it was by having a sizable amount of money flow into these races. So over $1.5 million was spent by a small group of national donors to flip our New Hampshire state legislature. Some of the groups focused on state Senate candidates, others focused on House candidates, and a couple of them kind of did a hybrid of both. But I don't know about you, but I can see how there was a transactional piece that occurred with placing this abortion bill within our state budget. This extreme policy was placed within our state budget, which is completely unheard of. It's non-germane. Let's talk about, like, hello. But maybe, you know, I'm connecting dots here. I don't know about you, but I'm assuming that the Pro-Life PAC, Protect Life PAC, Sanctity of Life PAC, Traditional Values PAC, Conservative Ideals PAC, we're looking for a return on investment for helping to elect these folks. I don't know about you, but those are some of my thoughts in looking at who donated to get this libertarian Republican legislature elected into their small majority.
And for those of you who've never run for the state house like Caitlin and I have, you probably don't realize how little most candidates spend to run. I mean, it's, you know, we're going to get $100 a year, so it's not like we're going to spend $100,000 to get elected. Most people, they spend some money on yard signs. They might spend some money, you know, they might do a mailer. You know, $1,000 is probably a pretty significant amount of money to spend for the average candidate for the House. The Senate has to spend more because those districts are much larger. But if you're a House candidate, you're typically only trying to reach, a few thousand voters. And so you don't need a whole lot of money to do that. But if somebody comes in and dumps a bunch of money in there, then they can do things like Facebook ads. Those were very effective in 2020 because people weren't going out. You could have yard signs all over the place, but if people were staying inside their house, they didn't see them. But they were on Facebook, and probably even more so on the internet in various places than ever before, because you're sitting home and you're bored and you got nothing to do. So the money, $1.5 million doesn't seem like very much. And of course, Jason Sorens in his clip that you played was talking about 5 million, and that was 20 years ago.
Right.
The truth is, $5 million isn't very much money when there are 1 million voters in this state. And people who really care about having better policies than the ones that these folks would put in place ought to be willing to open their pockets and to put some money forward. Because, if they have money, then other candidates have to have money to compete with them. So we go from $500 on yard signs in a mailer to, Facebook ads and newspaper ads, and maybe even, hiring some staff people to be able to coordinate efforts and do door-to-doors and those kinds of things. It raises the cost for everybody to have, this kind of money coming in. But if they're going to do it, we have to compete.
Right. And I think it's important to note too, with this $1.5 million, we're not talking, we have 400 reps, 24 state senators, but what they spent this on was on less than 70 candidates. You break that down per person, per district, that is a lot of money being filtered into our communities for a specific cause from national entities, right? So it's no wonder that we're seeing some of what we're seeing coming out of Concord because of who donated to help elect these folks. And kind of maybe to touch on what you were talking about, how abortion rights kind of knocks up against the wall of libertarianism. I kind of see it as back to the point of how are they moving their agenda? They saw that as a compromise so that they can have buy-in next time around from these folks. They may not agree with it. They're like, all right, I'll give you that this time. Next time, we'll see what happens, right? So, but I want to kind of dig in real quickly into what does this reality look like? I know Kermit's touched on it quite a bit as well, of what does this look like in our towns? What does it look like for our state? A lot of these bills that we've seen passed by the Libertarian Republican majorities in Concord are going to directly result in our local property taxes being raised, not this year, but next year, because that's the way the budgets are going to flow. We'll get a slight increase probably this year, probably be offset a little bit with all of this, the federal money coming in to help with our local communities. But it's there. It's going to be long term. Those impacts are there. Like Kermit said, those red listed bridges aren't going away. Hopefully we can get some of that Build Back Better money to help fix some of those bridges if our elected officials allow that federal money to come into our state.
Right. If the executive council doesn't vote to not accept it.
Exactly. Do you want to talk a little bit about that $27 million that was denied?
Yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of people probably don't realize is that New Hampshire's really not doing very well as far as the pandemic is concerned. A year ago, 6 months ago, you'd see Governor Sununu on TV every day talking about how New Hampshire's way ahead of everybody else and our numbers are low. And then, when the vaccine started to be available. You know, he was touting how New Hampshire was right on top of it. And the truth is, a lot of those numbers were wrong. And as news agencies have looked into it, they've found that actually what New Hampshire had reported back then and what New Hampshire reported more recently was actually not correct. And whether that was, errors in the system or whether that was somebody lying, who knows? But the truth is, we're not doing that well. People are still dying. 35 people died in the last week from COVID. And we have way too many cases. We only have 55% of New Hampshire vaccinated, fully vaccinated. I mean, in my town, I live in a little town that's 3,700 people. And last week we had 34 new cases of COVID, which is way more than we had a year ago. So people are kind of losing control of, the things that they did to keep themselves safe. So this idea of the federal government offering us money to have, vaccine clinics and to maybe to make the vaccine more available to, as they start to make it available to kids, which is, really critical, because a lot of those numbers in this state are coming out of the schools, not even just the kids, but also the teachers that associate with the kids. But that $27 million was really a small amount of money that would have had a big impact in terms of, making portable, van type clinics available in rural areas, and, making sure that there was enough people to be able to deliver those shots in people's arms. And we were the only state out of 50 states to turn that money down. Places where there's probably even less vaccination than us, and there aren't that many states like that, but Mississippi or Alabama, they took the money. Now maybe they just, maybe it's transactional, and maybe they're going to try to spend it on something else, but the turning that money down was just so short-sighted. And I think a lot of the reason they did it is because some of these libertarians went after them. They marched into executive council meetings and acted like they were going to take over. And if in a lot of other circumstances, if a bunch of Democrats had done it, we probably would have gotten arrested. But they let him speak, and then they kind of chased him out, and then they went ahead and did more or less what they asked him to.
Exactly. There's one of these free staters that ran for the state senate, and Sununu was there and helped do election work for that person. That person had the crowds all ginned up, and literally called the governor to say, we're coming in and you shouldn't be doing this. And he picked up the phone. So for him to then say he's upset, yeah, he's taking phone calls. He's out there knocking or doing mail pieces, supporting and endorsing these folks that maybe don't necessarily agree with his values, but he sees them as folks that he needs to have in his corner for some reason. But then he also went and signed this budget with this radical policy in it. So he kind of talks out of both sides of his mouth, but at the end of the day, he's supporting this agenda. All the state senators supported this agenda, and it's really creating a breakdown. And this is sort of how it looks, and this is how it plays out. It has real impacts. $27 million, that, like Kermit said, that means kids not having access to the vaccine during a time when cases are spiking in our schools. It's inhumane doing that.
Yeah, and I think the governor is very transactional, just like some of the other people we've talked about. He has his eyes on doing something bigger, maybe running for Senate, maybe running for president, who knows? And if he sees getting the support from some of these out-of-state groups and some of these activist groups as part of his way to do that. And so he's going to support what they want, whether he really sees it, whether it's part of his philosophy or not.
Right. Well, that's
And
what,
then, and then he'll downplay his choices.
right. So I'm going to touch on real briefly here, sort of how these Free Staters feel about him, even after he helps elect them and supports them and has his face on mailers with them. Earlier this year, I guess it was recorded that he said that libertarians are taking over the Republican Party, and the Free Staters saying, yeah, we are. What are you going to do about it? They're calling him out. Like, what are you going to do? And then another one here is a tweet I got from one of these folks saying that didn't agree with what I had to say, saying if I don't agree with his way of thinking, then I can just uproot my entire life and move to a different state. And I'm sorry, I'm just not going to uproot my life. And I'm more than certain there's probably over 1.3 other million people that legitimately can't just uproot their lives because we don't agree with your extreme political ideology. It's just, I'm not sure what world they're living in, but it's different from the actual reality of what everyday New Hampshire citizens are facing and what their worlds look like. And so real quickly, I'm going to share another audio clip here, or video clip actually, to kind of tie it all back to the original sound clip. Another sound clip here.
I'm thinking about creating a new service. So we have the Free State Project, which is, all the Free State Project is telling libertarians, stop beating your head against the wall. Most of the people you talk to will never turn libertarian. You will never have a libertarian society. Instead, pick up and move over here and help us build a libertarian society with a whole bunch of libertarians who share that basic ethic that they will not use violence against you. Okay, so that's all the messages for Free State Project. But I think that we needed something else called the Slave State Project, which says, all you New Hampshire people who are here who can't stand these changes, this slide into liberty that's going on, this freeing up of human beings. Well, you pick whichever state you want that is going in the right authoritarian direction. You don't like guns. Well, here's all the states that outlaw guns all together. And we will find a libertarian in that state, and we're going to do a wife swap. Okay, so we'll swap you guys. We'll pay for. We'll help you pack. We'll help you load up the truck. You can actually stay in the libertarian's house while he sells it. While we sell it for him, and he can stay in your house while we sell it for you. But you can have exactly the government. You have 49 choices, authoritarian choices out there, and you can pick and choose whichever one you want. We'll help you go there, and we'll bring someone here who actually wants liberty. So it's I call it state swap, or the slave state project. But we need something else for all these people, because they're going, well, look, I'm living here. I really wanted to turn this.
All right, so to bring it back to some of the original words of the person that created this movement, where a very small amount of people have actually taken them up on it, but they have done so, and a few of them have been elected to our legislature. Like, this is where they're coming from. So we have an elected officials that moved here as part of this movement that is really being endorsed by the Republican establishment here. And they're of the thought and belief that if we don't agree with who they are and what they're about, then we can just leave.
Yeah, and the idea that basically 20,000 people, if they ever get to that number, should convince, a million other people that they don't belong here. I think it's crazy. And I think we're making the mistake, if because if we let them do this, that's the only way it's going to happen, is if we let them do this. If we sit back and say, well, we don't need to get involved. This isn't, something, this isn't my fight. If you take that attitude, then they could succeed, but there's really only a handful of them. And so we only lose if we sit on the sidelines.
Exactly. I agree. And so real quick, I'm going to recap here that before I move into what we can do to take some action here, is the Libertarian Republicans here in the state and the Free State Project members have extreme goals for our state. And these Libertarian Republicans and Free State Project members have plans and tactics for achieving their goals. And these extreme goals, plans, and tactics are dividing our communities, and they're dividing our communities on purpose. So how do we stop this attack on our democracy? I think an important thing that we need to remember, and I just pulled a quick quote from Senator Paul Wellstone that I thought was nice. It talks about how politics is not about money or power games or winning for the sake of winning. Politics is about the improvement of people's lives, lessening human suffering, advancing the cause of peace and justice in our country and the world. Just like here in New Hampshire, as part of the Constitution, as Kermit said, and we have our selectmen and overseer of the poor, it's like we have an inherent nature about us from when we started about how we want community and how government is okay if it's making lives better. And I think one of the things that we need to also remember is the public supports us for a lot of our ideas. We're not the ones that, in order to move whatever sort of vision we have to do it by extreme measures of dropping $1.5 million to elect a handful of people or attaching extreme policy to state budget. That's what these folks have to do to move their agenda. So we have a winning message. The public already supports us and what we believe in. And so it's the Libertarian Republicans, they're the ones that are moving the extreme measures in any way possible that involves minimal communication with actual people, minimal interaction with those folks in their communities. And do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so what's funny out there is I just took a look at Twitter, and our some of our viewers, Keith Ammon, I see you out there. Keith and I were in the legislature together. They are tweeting about what we're doing. So it looks like they're maybe a little worried about us. Maybe worried that we actually have a point to make. And I think hopefully this audience, those of you who aren't free staters or libertarians who are here just to try to make fun of us, will recognize that there is a point to be made and that this is really important. If you don't want to pick up and move out of state and trade with a free stater, if you believe that New Hampshire is the place that you want to live your life, if you love New Hampshire, like I think most of us who live here do, then you're going to want to not just sit back and say, well, it's just a political fight and I'm not, going to step in on one side or the other. You need to take a stand. And I don't think what these guys want to do is going to benefit you. So take some time, look into it, but you really need to understand what's going on. And that's the whole reason for having this presentation. It isn't to make fun of the free staters. It isn't to, to make them, somehow look like the boogeyman, even if they are the boogeyman. But it's to make sure that you recognize what's going on and have an opportunity to do something about it, because it's your state too.
Right. And so ways that folks can take action is really simple. Vote. Vote in your town elections, vote in your city elections, vote in special elections, attend meetings, get involved, vote in our state elections. Research who the candidates are, not just the Republicans or the people running as Republicans are really libertarians. Research all of the candidates, be an informed voter. Who is Kermit? Why does he want to be my state rep? What's he about? Pick up the phone and call these folks and ask them the hard questions, because New Hampshire is such a small place. Our communities are so small. I know I have really great communication with several of my local officials, just to one, get to know who they are, but two, so they know who I am and what I stand for and what I believe in, so that we can have a dialogue and we can have communication and we can have disagreements without them saying, you don't agree with me, you need to move away. No. So communication, one-to-one, make it relational. Let's bring it back to neighbors. Ways that you can also take action to inform folks is writing letters to the editor, or you yourself stepping up to run for office. There are so many different things that you can do to take action, whether with what you've learned tonight or what you want to do, who you are and what you're about. And then I guess we can do some Q&A. I can do a stop share.
So there are lots of questions out there. I see at least 20 of them. And some of them are pretty simple. And one of them, for instance, is, did the Free State Republicans vote for the budget with the abortion restrictions? And they absolutely did. You know, at least on the House side, it's a very close contest between Republicans and Democrats. I believe the number is maybe 20 votes difference between Republicans and Democrats. And so if everybody didn't vote, then if every Republican didn't vote on the Republican side, if just a few of them voted with the Democrats, things wouldn't pass. That's why we're still not a right to work state, because there were a few Republicans who were willing to vote against right to work. Another question I see on here is about Bill Weld, who ran on the Libertarian ticket as vice president. Is he severe? Well, I think Bill Weld is kind of transactional. I think he was looking for an opportunity to keep in the public eye, you know, since he left the Massachusetts State House, where he certainly was not a libertarian. He had lost his audience. So, you know, running as vice president on the Libertarian ticket was a chance to try to be a little bit more visible. Any questions you want to take up off that list?
Sure. I see someone asked about agitators going in from outside communities to school board meetings. I have seen some of that where you have, there's someone here, even in my town, that will go to other towns in their school board meetings and hold signs. So there is some of that happening. And that's not something that we're just seeing here in New Hampshire, unfortunately. That is something that you're seeing across the country, with part of this ginning up of feelings of distrust and just that's being sowed for the 2022 election.
So I see somebody asking about abortion bills, and apparently maybe my voice didn't come through. And so basically what I was saying was that the abortion restrictions that were put in, as Caitlin mentioned, they didn't pass them as individual bills, they put them in the state budget. And I don't know if any of you have ever read the state budget. I certainly have. And there's actually two bills in the state budget. One is the actual numbers, and the other is what's called the trailer bill, which has all the sort of application rules for how that money is going to be applied. And it is massive. thousands of pages. And so a lot of people don't really even look at the details. They just vote. They do, you know, if your leadership says you should vote for it, you vote for it. So those bills or those restrictions were put in the budget as a way to hide them. But in reality, if you're a libertarian and you really believe that people's individual freedom is the most important thing, you shouldn't be voting for something that puts those kind of restrictions in place. And if enough of those, you know, if all the people who have those free state affiliations had voted against the budget, they would have had to take the budget and take those things out of it and put it back up again. But they didn't, because like I said, I think it's transactional. I think they think they're going to get support from the evangelicals for things that they want, and in exchange, they're supporting the things the evangelicals want. And the truth is that neither of those two collections of ideas or changes to state law really benefit the majority. You know, in most surveys I've seen, 70% of people in New Hampshire are not in favor of those types of abortion restrictions.
So someone asked how many folks have moved here. I think it's really hard to tell. Somewhere just recently, they said somewhere around 2,000 members have actually moved here, but it's hard to tell over 20 years or so, or a little less than 20 years, like, have people moved? Have they not moved? And so I think the thing is the perception of the reality of these free staters and their impact is a lot stronger than their actual reality of what they've actually been able to accomplish. And so if I was, like, I'll say this again, if I was a Republican, I'd be seriously thinking through, are these folks actually threats, or do I just need to do what I need to do to actually go back to governing the way we used to?
So I see a question that says, what happens when a community runs into a situation like Merrimack did with PFAS? Who monitors, who remedies, who regulates? The truth is, in the libertarian paradise, you know, sort of the end state of a libertarian takeover of New Hampshire, those things would probably be way down the list, because you wouldn't have a police force, and you wouldn't have, you know, as I mentioned before, you know, they eliminated the fire department in Grafton. Even though it was a volunteer fire department, they didn't want to put up the money for the equipment. And you know, you would end up having to pay for your own services, because no taxes would be raised for services. So as far as anybody regulating the things that might kill you down the road, like PFAS, that's like way off in space. I mean, in a libertarian world, you don't do that, because of course you want to let any business that wants to do whatever they want to do it, because after all, it's their freedom. But the reality is, you know, what they do has an impact on you, and it may not be immediately visible, which is why things like PFAS, you know, that those chemicals were put into the air and the water and the soil many years before people really realized that it was a problem.
All right. Well, we're just at past 8:30. I'm not sure. I want to be mindful and respectful of everyone's time.
I think that might be my cue to come in and thank our speakers, our panelists. I learned a lot this evening. Thank you very much, both of you, Caitlin and Carmen. And I also want to mention are the two names that appeared below, Bev Cotton and Katie Cutchell. Both are county committee, executive committee members who did an outstanding job of organizing tonight's event. As I mentioned earlier, this is will be appearing on YouTube, so please share it with your friends. That's the whole purpose of this, is to get the word out to the voters. A lot of people are not aware of what's happening in their own state. You know, I was born here. I've lived here. In fact, I've lived in Hillsborough County now for over 71 years, and I don't intend to move because somebody with different ideas comes into my state. Sorry, but ain't happening. Please join us again next week, same time, same station, when we present the elephant in the womb, the Republican attack on reproductive freedom, with special guests Congresswoman Annie Custer, Executive Councilor Cindy Warmington, and State Senator Tom Sherman. Our host that evening will be Representative Kat McGee from Hollis. I thank you again, everybody, for tonight. And I think that's going to be it for tonight. Thank you all, and good night.
Recording stopped.
All right. I think that's all we have for tonight. How did everyone enjoy that presentation? I'd like to invite Derek and Alou, if you want to, come on. We can do some commentary about what we just saw, answer any questions that might exist in the chat for these fine gentlemen. That was a little crazy.
Yeah. It seemed like a lot of conjecture and disingenuous arguments without presenting any real claims or content.
Yeah, I mean, it was like it seemed to me to be like really poorly researched, to be honest. Like
Oh yeah.
they could have found Dennis saying way more inflammatory things than what they found him saying.
There's a whole plethora of people they could have found saying way worse stuff than what Dennis said. I mean, Dennis was making an amazing point, and you know, all he was saying was that they'll be much happier if they go to a progressive state. They already have their progressive government, right? They don't have to keep fighting us, right? They can just go and be happy. And there's 49 other states and 195 countries that share their values, and they should just go someplace else because you know what? We're done running, and we found a homeland, and now we're going to work to make it a good place.
Well, it seems to me, and I want to say too, if there are any other New Hampshire libertarians or free staters that want to join the stream, just reach out to me on Signal, and I'm happy to send you the link to join. But it seems to me it's like they basically spent the whole time. First off, I think it was a fantastic advertisement for the Free State Project. Like it was like they basically went through all of the talking points, but it was also like they're pissed off if libertarians organize and spend money on stuff, but they're allowed to organize and spend money on stuff. They're just pissed off that we're winning.
Yeah, they were complaining about the 1.4 million, and then a quick Google search showed that they spent $24 million here in New Hampshire, just the Democrat Party.
Mm-hmm. So. Alou, what did you think?
Yeah, they pretty much always outspend us. I mean, there's a lot of hypocrisy. I think the big thing is that they are feeling threatened and everything. You know, they're afraid and they're upset, and all us crazy free staters want these horrible things like low taxes and personal freedom. But at some point, when will they get beyond just afraid and threatened and start actually supporting the PSP, the Progressive State Project? And I wanted someone to ask them in the Q&A. I was hoping you would ask, at what point will you move out? If they abolish,
I did. I totally did. I asked them. I was like, what? I asked them. I was like, what will it take you to leave the state?
Oh shit! I missed it. I'm at work and I'm running around.
No, they didn't answer it. They ignored it completely. They were like, we've got all these amazing questions, and they answered 3.
Yeah, that's the thing. Again, let's keep beating them, and eventually they're going to move out. I mean,
well, it's like I would love to actually see a Democrat talk to like the Free State Project or one of you guys to actually have a discussion about this. Like, why can't there just be a peaceful separation?
You guys have Mass, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania. There is a lot of land and beautiful stuff and amazing things going in Mass and Connecticut. They have Massachusetts is 10 times the size of New Hampshire in every way, right? They have all of that in Connecticut in almost every state. Depending on how you call it, maybe 5, 10, 20, 30 states are progressive, very progressive. All of California, very beautiful state. It's got tremendous amounts of things in it. You know,
great weather, better weather than here. I mean, come on, just go.
Eventually they're going to, and the problem with a lot of people is my theory about like a line in the sand. And I've asked people on both sides about various stuff. I ask Republican reps about secession and I say, how bad must it get before you secede? And they won't answer it. I say, if they are putting every capitalist to death, if they raise taxes to 100% and ban all guns, will you secede? And they don't have a line in the sand. They never thought about it and they refuse to answer it or address it. I want to ask them, what's their line in the sand? If these crazy radical libertarian, evil people abolish the government school system, if they ban the, vaccines from going into kids, if they support the opposite of coronafascism, if they oppose coronafascism, all these horrible things, if we get all of what we want and we're successful, then who's saying I'm slacking? I guess someone in the
Katie.
comments is saying I'm slacking. All right.
Katie is.
I'll deal with that later. So,
no, you're a very busy guy.
Yeah. So eventually, I want to ask them, when will they leave? And it might be the school system. It might be, coronafascism, vaccine stuff. It might be guns, if we make guns even more legal, although they're already totally legal in New Hampshire. But, no restrictions pretty much. But I want to know, what is their line in the sand? That's what we should try to ask them.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a fair question. I just want to say shout out to everyone at the Shell. Apparently they're watching us now at the Shell with 14 playing progressive bingo. So shout out to Dennis and everyone at the Shell tonight.
And I am glad I was featured a few times in their presentation. I am flattered to be up there with the rest of the amazing pro-liberty people. That gives them nightmares.
I just want to do a quick plug. So the Free State Project has a new podcast up, Pork Chat, and it's going to be live tomorrow. Carla, Justin, Jeremy, Bill, all sorts of things to talk about. 8 p.m. tomorrow on the Free State Project channel. I mean, did they really get, okay, so what did they get wrong about the Free State Project?
That it's super centralized. We have tons of billions of dollars of outside money. What else?
Yeah, there's no money. There's no money in this. I don't know why people think there's tons of money in this. Where's my check? I even did a PragerU video and I got no money. So there's definitely no money in this. Yeah. Reagan wants to know, can we get some bring your gun to work laws on the books? What do you guys think?
Well, I think, libertarians who believe in property rights, if you've got a private company, right, that doesn't want firearms on their property, I think that's totally reasonable. It's their property. They can do whatever they want with it. However, we have to recognize that a lot of this gun control stuff is being pushed from the top down. There's a lot of coercion going on. We have to fight against the coercion and protect property rights.
Derek, I've been threatening to debate you for a while. Carlin, let me get at him right now.
Do it. Go.
All right. So, obviously, as an anarchist, voluntarist, I'm a property rights absolutist. Government shouldn't exist. Property rights are 100% paramount. That being said, currently we live in a world where government controls everything. We have no private property rights. So let's work with the means that we have. I would support a law, not that mandates that everyone has a gun. I don't support any laws that mandate anything. I wouldn't support a law saying employers or people have to let guns in their store. But I would support a few kinds of laws that I'm hoping some state reps who are listening will propose next year, or maybe into amendment in one of their bills this year. Just one thing that requires out of state, or at least a resolution or a bill saying Massachusetts has to recognize our permits, or since we have no permits, people who live in New Hampshire who are carrying in mass for a little bit during the day, if they go into Massachusetts, the people of Massachusetts shall not bother us if we have firearms and stuff. That law, Massachusetts may not respect it, but it can start talking about states' rights and everything. Another awesome law is just passing a bill telling employers, reminding them that if they ban guns from being on their premises, they may be exposed to liability if something happens and a person can't defend themselves. That's all. Just a bill or a House resolution or something reminding employers what liability means. That's all. Something like that will start making employers think, instead of being on the CYA side of cover your ass as far as liability, if we do have firearms, maybe I'm liable if we don't have firearms. And remember, firearms are used defensively in 2 to 6 million times a year. Used defensively, mostly by just showing it, not firing it, just showing it gets the person to run away. So if I'm attacked or my wife is attacked while at work and they can't have a firearm because their employer, they might be held liable in civil court for that. So just reminding employers about that, again, we'll get that conversation going. And then we might see 99% of employers totally allowing their employees to carry at work, and same with going to other states.
Yeah, not much debate here, although I totally agree with you.
So they got the fact that they think that there's boatloads of money in the Free State Project. They got that wrong. What else did they get wrong?
My favorite slide, I threw that up in the chat too. My favorite slide is they had raise taxes, and then right next to it, it says abolish taxes. Like, which one is it? Make it make sense. Come on.
Exactly. I mean, I'm a pretty big fan of making it like voluntary for me to pay the property tax, which would effectively defund the schools.
Yeah, actually, Olo and I were having a conversation about that earlier today. I think voluntary property taxes is the next step forward, and I think that there are other ways to create income for local government. We talked about allowing government to accept donations, ad revenue. Go ahead, Olo.
This is my thing. I've been writing about this for years. I'm working on a whole book about it. Yeah, I wrote a few articles about it. I think I sent it to you earlier. Governments can and do raise money without taxation, which is violence. It's theft. They raise money via donations, ad revenue, whenever they put ads on their police cars, which they do in Manchester already. Whenever they put ads on any government building, property, the median, on the roads, tolls, signs, cars, vehicles, buildings, everything. They probably make millions. The MTA in New York City and New York State probably makes $50 to $100 billion a year from all their ads seen by millions of people every day on their buses and trains. Millions of ads. So they probably make billions a year. They don't need taxes. Again, the lottery system in New Hampshire, the 82 liquor stores, they're raising money in so many different ways. The lottery can make hundreds of millions. The ads, if they actually did more ads, they can make $6 billion. All we need every year is $6 billion for the state budget, right? They could easily raise $6 billion. Forget the lottery tickets and forget the 82 liquor stores. Just with advertisements. Again, if I were governor of the state, give me like a month and I would bid out ads. I would pit Amazon against Google, against Meta, and I would see or local businesses who wants to pay the most for ads, and the market will decide the market rate for ads. And if you want to pay me $20 a month for this size ad on this size fire engine, and you want to pay me $35 a month, I'll take that bid. And we can bid it out by week or month or year or whatever. But it is so easy to raise $6 billion when you're working with millions of square feet of space for advertisements. Am I wrong?
No, I think it sounds actually completely reasonable.
I'm all for it. Let's make it happen.
I spoke to the Speaker of the House, John Packard, about this for a while, a few weeks ago, and he actually didn't say I was crazy. He's like, yeah, that's pretty reasonable. In fact, I thought about it a few years ago. We tried a bill. I don't think it worked out, but he might try it again. My friend Julius, who's a state rep from Wyndham, did propose a bill that starts getting this going allows the state and municipalities, towns and cities to raise money with donations and or advertisements and give someone something. If they're giving you money, we give them an advertisement so they get some value in giving us money. Again, the Liberty Block, we're a small publication, second biggest in the state, whatever, but a small publication, we don't make or spend a lot of money, but I would spend, I don't know, 20, 50, $100 a month to get a nice, big, beautiful Liberty Block placard on the side of the Hooksett fire engine. Right there. I see value in it. I would do it. It's called capitalism, right? It's creative capitalism. I call it the new free market. So I would sponsor the fire engine for $100 a month for a 1 foot by 1 foot placard on the side of the engine. Will someone beat my bid? Maybe they can make $120 a month and go from there. Cover the fire engine and the police trucks. Hooksett, a small town. We have 100 vehicles? I don't know, fire engine, police, and the Department of Public Works. They should all be covered in ads. They're driving up and down 3A. They're seen by thousands of commuters every day. People will pay for ads. And if I'll pay $50 a month, if someone does a higher bid, that's fine. If they don't, they don't. But every town could raise enough for their budget. Our budget's $18 million for the town. We could raise that very easily. $18 million in a year. We could do that. Why do we have taxes? I think they're kleptomaniacs. They love stealing. They don't have to. They just love doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everyone listening, if you really listen to what Alo was just saying, he's talking about talking with the Speaker of the House, with other state reps here in New Hampshire. Our politicians are so accessible. I text state reps all the time and they actually respond. So it's really easy to make change, really easy to get in contact with your representatives. And so if you move here, you can make real change without doing a lot.
You basically throw a rock and hit a state rep. They're like everywhere. They're running around everywhere. Dennis has said of the Progressive State Project, progressives have lots of places to go. We have nowhere else to go. I mean, I don't understand. What is her name? What was that woman's name? Caitlin? I don't even know.
Yeah, Caitlin Rollo.
Yeah. So didn't she say in the presentation she moved here?
Yep.
So she's allowed to move here and run for office and presumably exercise the rights and responsibilities of that office. But libertarians are not allowed to move here and run for office and exercise I just don't understand. I don't understand the appeal to progressives of moving to a place like this. It just makes no sense.
I can guarantee she would be in favor of the whole campaign that's been going on to get Democrats to move from California to Texas to turn Texas blue. I bet she'd be in favor of that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So Lou, I know you were one of the protagonists of the Progressive State Project. Can you tell us a little bit more about it and what you guys are working on?
Yeah, it was pretty much Dennis and me, I think. We both actually had the same idea separately. He said he's thought about it over the years. I thought about this, I think, a year ago, 2 years ago. And then I said something or he said something and we got on the phone for a while. And he said it was really a joke. And I'm like, no, Dennis, I don't joke around. Like, I'm a serious dude. Let's do this. And he's like, no, it's funny. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. Let's really make a PSP. Let's do a progressive state project. And we spoke for a while, back and forth for a few days. And then we set up the site. And we're trying to build a team of writers and stuff to talk about the various issues. I started off with a few articles on the site, and I want to address every issue. You know, why New Hampshire is bad for guns. It's really bad. We have no gun control. Don't come here. It's really bad for taxes and welfare. Don't come here. It's horrible with, educational freedom. Don't come here. So we're doing that. And then I want to do an article with every single state, maybe explaining why New York is so big and beautiful. They have high taxes, great dictators like Cuomo and Hochul, all these great things in New York. So I want to do maybe an article about every state, and then go from there and just have a lot of content. But I've been so busy working 24/7 recently. I haven't put up an article on PSP in a few days, but anyone here who wants to help write for the PSP, and I think Dennis wants to be like pretty serious about it, not, be very honest and open, like most libertarians, not super nasty about it or being too satire, like very serious. This is what New Hampshire is. It's very free. If you don't like it, that's cool. Go to Massachusetts. So yeah, I want to get a lot more content up on the site and start building out social media and everything and growing the Twitter. So if anyone here wants to write, we need some more writers for the PSP.
Cool. What else about the presentation? Any other comments?
I mean, the whole thing is pretty obvious on what a joke that they are. I mean, I say joke, but we should definitely take what they're saying seriously. They are trying to make moves to stop us, and we should take those efforts by them seriously and be prepared to confront them. But all in all, I mean, what they had to say was hypocritical and a joke.
Yeah. And I mean, it was striking to me too, as they were like at the end, first off, she said there were over 5,000 Free Staters that had already moved here earlier in the presentation. And then towards the end, someone asked her how many Free Staters, and she was like, oh, it's a really small number. It's like their bark is worse than their bite sort of thing. But it's kind of like, if it's so small and so inconsequential, which it isn't, why did you even do this webinar in the first place? And apparently there's like another webinar on Wednesday what's going to rehash the entire thing. Why are they so scared if it's just really not that big of a deal and it's just a couple people?
And they said Ann Custer is coming, so it's very serious. Like, they're so threatened by a few Free Staters. And again, I throughout the whole presentation, I kept thinking, it's such a liability and an asset. It's so good and so bad, but it is very good that we're so decentralized. And I know a lot of libertarians, anarchists are very decentralized in a lot of things, and I generally agree in most issues that it should be decentralized. It's harder to attack if there's no one central point of failure, no one link that you can cut and destroy the whole movement. We're so decentralized, and Free Staters, the ultimate decentralized people who don't want to work together on anything. And like someone said, exiled. I'm like, yes, everyone exiles each other. I've exiled you. You've exiled me. We've all exiled each other. Everyone here in the chat has been exiled by a million libertarian groups. We have 1,000 libertarians in the state and 1,500 different kinds of groups, and that's fine. We have so much infighting, but the decentralization is so good, they can't destroy us. What are they going to do? Go after Kaufman, the FSP, the LP, the Mises Caucus, the Republican Liberty Caucus, the Freedom Caucus now in the House? Are they going to go after Sununu, even though he's a dictator? Are they going to go after me and Liberty Block? Okay, we have all of Granite Rock and all of you and all of Free Keene and Ian. They can't, you can't cut off 1,000 heads of a 1,000-headed dragon. And that's one of our biggest assets in this whole movement, is that we're so damn decentralized that they can't defeat us unless they defeat every single one of us. And we have 5,000 activists here. I'm just one, you're just one, Ian's just one. We have thousands of activists in a small state. They have 17 weak idiots. We have thousands of activists. So I think it's really hard to defeat us, and it scares the hell out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a hydra, not a snake.
Well, I had a great time watching the presentation tonight. Do you guys have any final thoughts before we conclude?
I saw a lot of questions in the chat about real estate. I'd like everyone
yeah.
to check out Porcupine Real Estate, group of Free Staters who became realtors, and they are liberty activists, and they help Free Staters move to New Hampshire, find the right area in the state that works for them. I actually have one of the realtors who's right down the road from me, so we talk all the time. Please check out Porcupine Real Estate if you're thinking about moving to New Hampshire.
All right. Lou, any final thoughts from you?
I'm loving all their endorsements. They just gave us about $28 trillion of free advertising. It's great that they're scared. You know what they say about being over the target. They're definitely scared. They always tell us who they're afraid of, and it's the Free State Project, so it's awesome. Thank you. Thank everyone in the chat, everyone who's a freedom activist, everyone in the chat who are watching who's not yet moved here, what the hell are you waiting for? I was in New York City. I had the best job a paramedic can have in the world. It was for Northwell Health System, the first ones to get the vaccine in the United States, the biggest health system, $11 billion a year, 60,000 employees, one of the best health systems in the world. They lead in almost every area. Northwell Health, I was a medic there. They start a long time ago at 31 something an hour for medics. Really, really good system, treated us phenomenally. They were involved in Hofstra University Medical School. I could have gone right into the medical school and been a doctor. I was set for life, and I left that life for freedom. And I dragged Kate with me, my wife, who now loves New Hampshire, but was very hesitant to go, up north and leave her parents years ago. So I left an extremely comfortable life. And when I hear I'm comfortable, I have a job, I have friends. Yes, I left it. And now I have even better friends who love freedom, who you want to use violence to enforce their views on me and steal my money and send police to violate me. So, moving to New Hampshire was pretty much the best decision Kate and I ever made. So for those in the chat who are waiting, like I spoke to a few people, I'm waiting this, that, the other job. Come here. We have the best economy in the universe right now. Every employer is looking for employees that would love to pay you tons of money, more than you make now probably, and we have less taxes. So no income tax and no sales tax and all that. And our taxes are on the trend down. So what are you waiting for? Move here. Get in touch with one of us and we'll help you move here.
Yep. And make sure you come to Pork Fest. If you're thinking about it, get your tickets early because it's going to sell out early this year. Dennis keeps saying. So make sure you come to Pork Fest. You can check out New Hampshire, meet everyone here. I will say, I've lived in New Hampshire for 10 and a half years. I moved here when I was still a Democrat. I'm sorry. But I have to say, there's no other place I'd rather be right now. There was a brief moment where I thought that maybe we would end up moving to Florida, but then I really started to connect with the more liberty focused people here and the LPNH and you guys. And I'm not going anywhere. I think I'm incredibly optimistic about what's going on in New Hampshire. It's like life, and it feels good, and it feels like there's a genuine community here. So I would just encourage everyone to come and visit if you haven't already. If you're afraid of winter, maybe don't come visit now, come visit later. But winter's really not that bad. And if that's the biggest thing holding you back is that you have to buy a jacket and some boots, and maybe you don't even need snow tires. Most people don't even need snow tires here, so it's fine. But I had a great time tonight watching it. I thought it was an excellent endorsement. I hope the Free State Project makes many clips from it to continue to market themselves. But guys, that's all we have for right now. So please mount the like button if you appreciated the stream on the way out the door. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I'd love your subscription today. That'd be great. And that's all we have for right now. I'll be back tomorrow with some more content. Thank you, Alu, and thank you, Derek, for joining me. And shout out again to everyone at the Shell watching. Hope you guys are having a great night. We'll see you soon.
Live free or die.